everybody. I'm Amy Zawi with CAMERA's Partnership of Christians and Jews. CAMERA stands for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis. And today I have joining us a friend of mine, Sima Parsai, from the West Coast of the United States. She's in the healthcare industry and she has a really unique perspective. And the reason why I brought her on our program to share her experiences with you is because she is actually an Iranian. She's an American citizen now, but she is Iranian by her nationality, and she lived in Iran during her childhood. And she is still connected with the Iranian community to this very day. And because of that unique vantage point and the recent histories that we have had that we're witnessing unfold in the Middle East, I thought it would be a great idea if Sima explained that perspective of the Iranian people in terms of what's been going on in Israel, the regime in Iran versus the humanity of the people and the sentiment of the people. And this perspective is really important because the majority of, or I would say a vast proportion of the Iranian population is not anti-Semitic and have nothing against Israelis or Jewish people. And so that perspective is really important for our network to hear, especially since the 12-day war in June. I was honored and privileged to make Sima's acquaintance back in September 2024, so almost a year ago, at the Israeli American Council's annual summit in September in Washington, D.C. So, Sima, I am so happy. Over the past year, we have connected with each other on WhatsApp, voice messages, text messages, and it is great to see you in virtual person again. And I just really enjoy hearing your heart and your perspective about what is going on in the Middle East and how you have absorbed it and contemplated, and how your heart is just really seeking truth and really seeking a goodness in humanity, and to combat evil in that sense of exposing it and connecting with people. So if you wouldn't mind telling our network, our audience, a little bit about your background and how you come to know the things that you know. And then I would like to talk about what happened since October 7th in the Middle East, the reasons why you went to the IAC conference, the Israeli American Council conference in September to begin with, and also what is going on in just the hearts and minds of the people in Iran today, as we are a month or so out from the 12-day war with Israel. So thank you for joining us. I apologize for the long introduction.
Thank you.
But it is great to see you again, and your story is just so touching, and I really want you to be able to share it with our viewers.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you to the viewers. As Amy said, my name is Sima Parsai. I am half Iranian, half British. My mother is of Irish descent. I was born and raised in Iran. I was born in Khuzestan, which is one of the southern provinces. I went to regular Iranian school. This is during the Shah's time. This is pre-revolution time. We went to school. Boys and girls were mixed up. There was no signs of headscarves or hijabs in the schools, at least where I went to school. And we, boys and girls together, we went to movie theaters, we played bowling, we played tennis, we went swimming. Everything was together. It really didn't matter what your religion was. In fact, I think I might have said this to you before, Amy. Back then, when I traveled to England, for example, to see the other side of the family, a lot of times they would ask me, what's your religion? And at the time, as a 9 or 10-year-old, I would say, well, I'm Muslim. But it was a cultural perspective being a Muslim. It was kind of like what did I label it as? As a non-threatening, non-violent form of Muslim. And it was a cultural identity. It wasn't this political Islam that came later, because to tell you the truth, most of us, at least myself and my friends, we weren't really religious. We just kind of identified, hey, we're Muslim because we were born here. And I remember having neighbors of different religion. It was not an issue. So basically, kind of picture a time in the 70s too, when mini skirts were fashionable. So a lot of women back in Iran, they actually did wear mini skirts, and they dressed normal, as I call it. And yes, we did have women who had hijab too, but it really didn't matter. It was kind of intermingled. It was a secular, uh, almost like a secular democracy situation, or leaning towards that direction. I mean, I'm not really going to get in the politics of it. I'm
Right,
just kind of
right.
visually talking about what I experienced and saw. And also at the time, my father's aunt, she was a minister of education. She was the first woman minister of education. Her name was Dr. Farah Parsai. And she was appointed as the first woman minister. Now, back in Shah's time, I think many forget that the women's rights came before Switzerland even.
Wow.
So just imagine half a century ago what that kind of meant. So in that climate, we had the first woman minister of education. Then later, after the revolution, she was executed. They accused her of being Baha'i. So it just shows you again, this regime, she was not Baha'i, first of all, but, and I have nothing against Baha'is, but the point being that they would just select different religions, whether, Jewish or Baha'i or anything else, and just execute people. Basically, we went from this climate of having freedoms of how you want to dress. We had women who became, teachers, doctors, everything was heading towards modernism. And I do remember too, when we went to the pool or when we went to the beach north of Iran, people wore their bikinis, their bathing suits, they mingled with each other. It really was not an issue. You did not see people with headscarves or chadors at the beach, because even in today's society, I mean, in my opinion, you have to dress appropriately for the occasion. So,
Sure.
fast forward to basically, our family. I don't know all the details, but what I remember as a child is we came out on a vacation to go to England to see our family, and basically that's when the revolution happened. Then all of a sudden, I hear from my friends, they're like, they closed the swimming pools now. The cinemas are closed. The women can't go to work. They brought forced hijab. One of my friends said to me, she said, yeah, one day, she said in Ahvaz, they told everybody, yeah, come to this neighborhood. You can speak your mind, say whatever you want. Well, all these people came and they expressed, I guess, whatever was in their heart. And then my friend says, next thing you know, they shot everybody and they piled everybody up and they took them away. So unfortunately, a lot of these sorts of events have unfolded in Iran over the last 46 years. We used to Back in Shah's time, we did have a Jewish population, because you probably know during Shah's time, he actually protected Jewish people, even World War II. And, there were people who came to Iran because they sought refuge, or Cyrus the Great, if you go back really historically speaking, did the same thing. So this regime came to power, and just from day one, very anti-Israel and anti-West. Just basically, Khomeini brought political. I don't know if he created it or he brought it with him, but it was political Islam, which even the Muslims in Iran, many of them do not accept this political Islam, because nothing about it really reflects the core values of many people. I would say over 90% of the people do not agree with the core values of this regime that's there. And so unfortunately, yeah, based on terror, they've been there. They've promoted anti-Semitism in the world, really. And when the October 7th event happened, uh, we saw those shocking scenes
Mm.
that came to be, and it was shocking because many of us Iranians, we already knew the Islamic regime was funding Hamas, because they openly speak about us. So when we speak Farsi, and maybe some of us speak a little bit Arabic, we know what's going on.
Mm.
And they're just openly talking about it, how they're funding Hamas. And so, and the next thing you know, obviously Israel has to respond to this, but it was really shocking. It was really brutal how this event happened. And then the protests started to happen to support Palestinians. And I'm not going to get involved in the political aspect of it, but what really kind of upset me was, well, here they are, they're wanting to support, let's say, Palestinians, but they're not denouncing Hamas.
Yeah.
And Hamas was kind of, I think, politically taking advantage of this situation. And specifically for me as an Iranian, or many Iranians, first of all, we're not anti-Semite, we never were. Second of all, we see this group, Hamas, which is a designated terrorist group that is backed by this Islamic regime that has occupied our country, from my perspective, for 46 years. They're supporting them. So, I'm not going to support evil. I can't do that.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. And
And
so
so
I
you
think,
were, sorry, you
yeah,
were witnessing, so October 7th happened, and
right.
you're aware because of your connection with just your linguistical connection, and also your friends and your network in Iran that you sort of still speak with online,
Yes,
however you do it.
right.
You knew that history of the funding, right? Iran was
Yeah,
funding terror in a variety of ways, including Hamas. And then you witnessed October 7th. So you kind of connected those dots and you're appalled by it. And I'm sure you've got the feedback from your own network that people in Iran are appalled by it. Your American expats, your friends in America are appalled by it, by who are Iranian. And then you see what's happening, for example, on the college campuses, or you see what's happening on the streets, these these from the river to the sea kind of protests, and
right.
these flags are going up. So what you're watching this unfold, this now we're right after October
Right.
2023, and you're watching this unfold. And what are you thinking as you witness this? You're watching the news or reading the newspaper, and you see these protests and you see these young people involved in these protests, and they're claiming therefore a freedom fighter or freeing the oppressed people of the Palestinians who they claim are oppressed. What is your feeling as you're watching this?
Right. I feel that they're misguided. I mean, I think none of us like to see anybody get hurt anywhere, no matter what the situation, right? No matter, whether you're Palestinian, whether you're from Israel, whether you're Jewish, non-Jewish, Muslim, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. But what was happening is in these, I think with these protests, these students, um, I personally think they must have been funded from somewhere. It was too uniform. They were exhibiting violence themselves. So I don't like that.
Mm.
And number two, they were not denouncing Hamas. So I feel that the Palestinians can speak for themselves, but I feel they probably feel oppressed by Hamas themselves because uh, Hamas, I think the history goes back to when they was first created. It was supposed to help socially, but then I think it kind of divided into two factions. And then ever since then, it just has been oppressive towards its own people. So anyway, from my perspective, as an Iranian, leaving Iran as a child, and then also in these 46 years, seeing so many people leave Iran because of that totalitarian regime that supports Hamas. We came to the US or Canada, we came here for peace and democracy, and then all of a sudden, we're seeing these protests. It was kind of like an alarm, I think, to many of us Iranians that, well, wait a minute, they're starting to kind of invade that space of democracy now. They're not really. Um, uh, they might be protesting, but they're not protesting for something that they're fully aware of, underlying. And I think
Mm.
what happened is, like, from my personal opinion, is I think Hamas kind of leveraged that for their own propaganda. So yeah, it's kind of threatening, you know, when you leave your own country, you're getting away from these Islamists. They're based, it's political Islam. It's not like anything any of us have seen before. This is something that since Khomeini came on board, they've used Iranian money. They've used the money of Iranians. They've kept Iranians in poverty. Instead, they've used that money to fund these people that are anti-Semite, anti-life, just anti anything that's fun or community-based, it almost seems. Just that's my perspective, and it's also the perspective of many Iranians inside Iran. I can tell you. Uh, I have a lot of connections in Iran, whether they're close friends or not close friends and acquaintances. The majority of them, the majority, even those who on the surface, sometimes you're not sure whose side they are. All of them, no doubt they are not anti-Semite. They're absolutely not anti-Semite. There's a tiny small percentage of people that are anti-Semite in Iran, and those are the folks that are part of this Islamic regime that is falling apart from within.
Wow.
And they've come to power just based on hate. I mean, from day one, they were anti-Israel, anti-West, anti-everything. And I'm not saying any political government is perfect. No political government is perfect, right? But what they have done, what these Islamists have done to Iran is, in my opinion, absolutely shocking. You know, when you take a country that was going towards modernism and then all of a sudden you try to bring the hijab and then all of a sudden you have a morality police and
Right.
just all kinds of nonsense in place, it doesn't make sense. And so anyway, all of these events kind of I saw the conference, and so I thought to myself, you know, I want to go there. Let me go there, see for myself. Let's
You mean
see
the
what's going.
EIAC conference?
Yes,
Yep, yep.
exactly. Yeah.
September
I
2024. Yep.
Exactly. Yes. I said to myself, I said, you know, I have time off. Let me go. Let me just see what this is all about. And so that's what caused me to go there. And in addition, I do have some relatives in Washington, D.C. And also anyway, it was a really good opportunity, and that's where I met you. And
Yes.
it was a great opportunity to see how everybody had come together in peace. You know, many people from different backgrounds. You know, Christians were there, non-Christians were there. I myself, I don't really. I think I just told this to you before. I don't really identify with a religion, and I sort of believe in God on some days more than others. I'm somewhere in between, you know. But I respect religions. I have many of my friends are Christians. I have non-Christians. I have Muslim friends. I have, you know, I have Baha'i friends. So for me, it doesn't really matter. What matters is if the person is honest, that they want this world to be a better place for
Mhm.
our children and for the future. That's kind of how I view things myself.
I feel like I learned a lot. What was the most memorable thing that you learned in a post October 7 world? There was a pretty visible contingent of Iranians, of Persian people that came in support of Israel to that
Oh,
conference
yes.
in DC. So that was for
Yes.
me, that was extremely encouraging to see. But
Yes.
what would you say as you think back about this 3 day event or so? What surprised you, or what was reinforced for you as you watched the Jewish community unite with other members of non-Jewish communities unite and be educated with a variety of speakers? We had beautiful artists, singers, and whatnot
Yes.
that performed for us. Do you have a particular memory or a topic that stayed with you after that event?
Yeah. So first, you did mention there was a huge Iranian support there, definitely, because they had I had come to the conference by myself. I didn't really tell anybody. I just kind of came, sat there, and then I met you there. behind me, there was a huge population. They had their flags out and they were supporting Israel. And the other thing is our crown prince Reza Pahlavi was there too in the audience and sitting in the front. And how he got my attention was that there was a row of people sitting beside me, these young folks that were they were American Jewish people, young people, and they all stood up and they said, "Oh, look, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is here." And I was shocked because I was like, "Oh, look, they know who he is. They recognize him and they're so respectful." That was one thing, and so to have him there to me was a symbol. Basically representing the majority of the Iranian people who do support the Jewish people. We're not going to get into the politics again, but they do support the Jew. They don't care, whatever your religion is. If you're a good person, you're not on the side of evil, we're going to support you, basically. The other thing that touched me was there were a couple of hostages, I believe, that came there and they spoke, and it was just it's one thing hearing about it, right, on the news, but it's something else when you actually sit there and you hear them talk about their experience, and you could just see the resilience that these people had. And again, I think overall, my take was I left there with hope because I saw different. It wasn't just Jewish people that were there. There were all kinds of people there. And they were all so positive, all having conversations or debates with each other, but it was all positive. And I remember leaving there and I thought, there is hope. There is no reason on this planet where we should allow hate to grow. We need to stop the hate. That's kind of what I remember. So, yeah.
So
I'm sure there'll be other things too. I
as you
I
think
can
about
think
the
of that.
question, sure. So we're 11 months out. We're coming up on oh gosh, I mean, can you even believe it's almost 2 years since October 7th?
Right.
2 months from that, we're a month out from a year from the IAC summit. And in the last 11 months that transpired, we still have 50 hostages. At this
Yeah.
time that we're recording this, there's
Yeah.
still 50 hostages and a ceasefire and negotiations and all those things that accompany war, the trauma that the Israelis feel and the fallout from the war in Gaza. But in the middle
Yeah.
of all that, we had this episode with Iran, right? And we
Right.
had this 12-day war. That's what they're
Right.
calling it, this 12-day war.
Right.
Nobody knew how long or what was going to happen when it started in June 13th, I think.
Right.
And here we have Israel going after Iran's nuclear facilities and their ballistic missile sites. Israel is, from my opinion, and people may differ, extremely open in their task and also targeted in their or precision in their attacks. But you have, as a Iranian woman with folks on the ground in Iran that you're texting and talking to on your cell phone, now they're in a war zone, technically speaking. What was going on during those 12 days when you were watching this unfold on the news and communicating with your friends in Iran as Israel was executing their mission?
Right. Well, first of all, the communication was a little bit choppy because, as probably the majority know, the Islamic regime does its best to shut down the internet whenever it pleases. So there's heavy censorship that goes on even on WhatsApp and other places. But despite that, what I can tell you is many of the people that I was in touch with, they went through the Iran-Iraq war, so they knew what like a real war felt like. Okay. So when I spoke with them, I will tell you that there was a lot of calm because many of them, they watch, despite how they try to censor them, many of them still are able to access media. They listen to Netanyahu's speech.
Oh, wow.
They listen to other sources of media. In fact, they knew ahead of me. They're like, because I'm going to work, they're not. They knew ahead of me. And they there was remarkable calm. They said, well, we left the city. Some of them, they said, we left the city, we came back, but we knew that they're just after the bad guys. They're after the ones that have created the situation here. And there were other people that I spoke to that did not leave Tehran. They, for various reasons, they didn't want to abandon their job. They couldn't. They stayed. One family, they stayed in their bathroom when this was going on. So although they were scared with the sound and everything, I'm telling you, 100% the people that I talked to, none of them came out and had anti-Israel slogans or anything. In fact, some even said, why didn't they finish the job? Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I'm telling you the honest truth, this is what the Iranians from inside Iran said. So I think they they know that when, first of all, the war is a war that Khamenei started. Okay,
Mhm.
he started it. He funded terror. He has been terrorizing Iranians, and he's extended his terror to other people through Hamas and all these terrorist organizations that he's been funding. So the majority of Iranians, there were some videos where they were having drinks. I don't know if they're alcoholic or not, but they were having drinks when Israel was attacking.
Wow.
So now I'm not promoting any of that. So just so we're clear on that, so
Sure.
people don't misinterpret what I say, but it's just the reality of what happened and how many folks on the ground, they were like, well, it happened, but you know what? They weren't after us Iranians.
Mhm.
They were after the regime itself to cut us arms, so to speak. Some say maybe to give the Iranians a little bit more power so that they can confront the enemy from within, because as many know, it's a totalitarian regime, which means they pretty much hold a gun up on your head. And since that 12-day war, many of my friends say that the Islamic regime is like a wounded wolf,
Wow.
and like a frightened, wounded wolf, basically alluring to the fact that when they come out with their phones, they're checking their phones, they're very paranoid. They executed a lot of people there, which is what they typically do when they see that they're losing. They start executing people. And I myself, I have always said this, Khamenei or whatever his name is he's like Hitler. That I have always said that he's like Hitler. I've since, when I left Iran, okay, as a kid, I was 12 or 13. I wrote a diary, and I actually went back in there yesterday and the day before. I was reading some of the stuff that I wrote, and I thought, well, wow, I for a person at the age of 12 or 13 who didn't watch news or follow politics ever until this event happened, I felt like my assessment at the age of 12 or 13 was right on when I was like, oh my God, look what they've brought to our country. This is like, it's a disaster, basically, and it's been a disaster. So I think Iranians very much so, they identify with Israel or the Jewish people. They identify with the people, okay, because nobody should suffer, no one should be attacked. When Hamas attacked, it wasn't just Israeli people or Jewish people, right? This was, from what I understand, there were people from many countries,
Yeah.
they were all young people mainly, who had attended. They were just having a party, and they attacked them brutally. There's just no words for it, how anybody can behave like that anywhere. It's just unbelievable what happened there. I, I guess, my wish is that the Iranians uh, basically understand that they need to stay united together with the people of Israel, stay united and just fight against those who want to slaughter people or kill people or just do evil in this world. And don't be fooled by them either. That's what I would say.
That's a
Um,
good warning for sure. So when you see in North America, or you see news feeds from Europe, for example,
Yeah,
and you have seen for decades the death to America, death to Israel chants that was coming from the Iranian regime, not the people in general.
right,
And
right.
I mean, how did that make you feel, and how did you, or did you articulate to your just your general network who knew your background and your heritage, that that wasn't what the majority of the people in Iran were feeling, and that they were themselves under an oppressive regime? And you articulated it really well once to me. You said that the Iranian regime that has the power right now, they're a lethal. They're like a lethal political form of
Yes,
Islam,
correct.
and that's separate from
Right.
before the revolution, where you had Islam and you had
Right.
Christians and Jews and other
Yes.
minority religions. What went through your mind when you see those things on the news, and how you knew in your heart that's not the people, that doesn't represent the people of Iran? How did you
Right.
digest that? Or
Right. Well, I mean, I've always known it. Wherever I go, any place, I always articulate it. I think from the age of 12 or 13 onward, anywhere I went, I always represented myself as a proud Iranian. I never shied away from saying that. And anytime I've seen them do that, I always explain to my friends, I said, don't be fooled by that. I really wish, um, I wish the media was more objective, because they show a one-sided event. They don't show all the other peoples that were protesting against
Mhm.
these people that are, burning yeah, if American flags or burning the Jewish flags. Yeah, they don't show the other side. And so I always try to do my best to represent that. And, I'm on Facebook too. And I think the majority of people that I see, the majority of Iranians or people from Islam, the majority of people, nice, down to earth, regular, normal people.
Yeah,
Uh, Unfortunately, sometimes on social media, you see that 5%,
the worst of them. Yeah.
the worst of them, that they're trying to manipulate everything. Um, and I think we have to be careful not to fall for that, because when the regime in Iran in 1979 fell, I think it was, in my opinion, it was that 5-10% that were fooled by Khomeini. And I'm sure 5,000 other political reasons why this happened. But basically, it went towards what it did, which was creating this lethal political Islam, which has, in a way, it's been allowed to grow. What they do, in my opinion, I think they use democracy they use it as a leverage to promote what they do, and people that are not really aware of what they stand for can fall for
Call
it.
for it. Call
I
for it.
think, yeah, that's how
So
I see
you mentioned that the majority of the Iranian people are just sort of, for lack of a better term, just normal people that want to live and coexist with either their
it. Right,
neighbors, their national neighbors.
correct.
So, how would you explain, if someone was just asking you, why do the Iranian people who are not sharing a border with Israel,
Mhm.
why do they see or feel solidarity or a sympathy to what has unfolded in Israel since October 7th, and even before, as a tiny democracy of freedom in the Middle East? Because I do believe the Iranian people are not anti-Semitic, and certainly
Right,
haven't been before October 7th. So how
right.
might you explain the reason why the majority of the Iranian people don't have it out for Israel, and in fact are supportive of them as they face all of this terror, often funded
Right.
by the regime?
Mhm.
What would be a way to articulate that, so that our viewers and listeners would know that the Iranian people, they don't
Mhm.
have hatred, they don't have an anti-Semitism
Right.
in their
Right.
in their thought.
Well, because during Shah's time, we weren't anti-Semite. I think it's simple. We weren't anti-Semite. We had a huge, I think, what I read was we had the second largest Jewish community in the world after
Wow.
Israel. So we had Jewish people in our community. It was not an issue. They just lived among us and no problem. And it was with the coming of the political Islamists who not only didn't like anybody who supported the Shah, um, and because the Shah supported secularism, he supported many freedoms. I mean, some like to label him as a dictator. Whatever you want to label him as, he supported secularism. He supported women's rights. He supported the right for you to have whatever religion you want and to, live there. So, and then since the Islamists, the political Islamists came to power in 1979, they basically flipped the switch. They became anti-women, anti-Semite, anti-Baha'i, anti-life. They banned music. They banned, I think they had the university shut down at some point for 2.5 years.
Wow.
They did all these things supposedly in the name of freedom. I mean, what freedom, right? Here they are, they're having a revolution. What freedom have you created? You've just basically taken, whether you believed, I mean, no system is perfect, but the bottom line is these things were there and people were enjoying them, and all of a sudden you take them away, and then you become a totalitarian regime where you're taking people and based on their faith you're executing them or you're putting them in jail because of how they think. So I think so even prior to October 7th, I don't think there were any issues. Like the Iranians were okay with the Jewish people; they never had a problem with it. But I think October 7th just highlighted how evil the Islamic regime is for it to go fund Hamas, take away money from the Iranians themselves and fund this terrorist organization to come and brutally murder people is uncalled for. And you cannot justify it by saying, oh, look at our history. They did this, they did that. No, many things happened, I'm sure, in the history between Palestinian and Israel. Either side, I'm sure, did some things that weren't right. Nobody's perfect. But the bottom line is, you don't solve it by coming on October 7th and using Iranian money, which is meant for the people of Iran to fund a terrorist organization and install terror upon people. And I think that's exactly what they've done. So I think Iranians understand it because many for 46 years, like those born after me who were born under this regime and went through so many other atrocities that I can't even imagine because, I was one of the lucky ones. I came out as a child. I didn't directly experience what they did. So many of them relate to it because they see how these people have used force and evil to try to justify their cause.
Wow.
And the other reason I say this is because I was looking up, there was a speech that recently, let me see if I can find it. Uh, Basically, they say that this Qatar-based senior Hamas official, Ghazi Hamad, claimed that Hamas' October 7th atrocities spurred Western nations to recognize a Palestinian state. He's basically saying, he says the initiative by several countries to recognize the Palestinian state is one of the fruits of October 7th. So here you have this Hamas leader like calling it a fruit. So basically, he's approving of violence to make a statement to say, "Oh, look, our causes has been successful." And personally, like from a moral standpoint of view, I 100% oppose anybody who uses violence to make a statement or a political gain, because that's just like the Islamic regime when they came in, 1979 to Iran. They used force, they used violence, they used manipulation to get what they want, and they're trying to do that to Israel right now. From what I read, from the little knowledge that I have, that's kind of how I see it.
Sima, I think that's tremendously insightful and connects a lot of dots from historically over decades and across borders because of that train of thought. Just like you mentioned that evil train of thought where you can have ill-gotten gains from violence and atrocities, and I think that's important for a network to realize, and you articulated it so well just then, so I thank you for that. If you were a spokesperson for the Iranian people who don't have a voice right now, you mentioned that you had folks in your community that wanted Israel to quote finish the job, and I'm assuming, I'm going to infer that means regime change, right? They're
Yes,
for regime change, um,
yes,
and Israel was pretty quick to say that would be nice, but it wasn't their mission, and that's a whole
correct,
separate conversation,
correct.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. And they
But
are right.
I think we all want regime change. It's the how,
Yes,
right? And what external
yes,
forces could
yes,
possibly make that happen in a good way with a good outcome. But
yes.
what would you say if the Iranian people had a message for the world and a message about the intricacies or the nuances that are going on in the Middle East, because the news is so full of false, like you've mentioned, just false news and false narratives,
Yeah.
spin, so that gullible college students, for example, could be thinking they're acting for the oppressed when in fact they're acting on behalf of terrorists. What might you say that would embody what the Iranian people might be feeling or thinking that they would want the West to know?
Yeah. The majority of Iranians support secular democracy. They support their Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. The young people, they know that during the Pahlavi era, whatever the political system was labeled, was bringing democracy, what brought peace, brought many things, like happiness, just basic things to them. And they don't understand why their forefathers were fooled by the, revolution in 1979. And they do not want the Islamic regime. They told me that we want Pahlavi back in our country. We want secular democracy. We all believe in the vote of the people for what they want for the future. So if I had to personally say something, I would say they're correct. I would say we should not again allow that 5 or 10% to win the war of the media or the manipulation of politics,
Mhm.
because Iranians, the majority, they're very nice people. They have a good culture. I guarantee you, if we put regular Iranians in a room with people from Israel, Jewish people, Baha'i, whatever, there would not be a problem. Everybody would be talking in about a minute about things that they have in common, and there would not be a problem. The problem is that 5 or 10%, that unfortunately in politics in the world, they're I don't know, they're manipulating a lot. And I think the prayer for most Iranian is that this Islamic regime, the quicker it goes, the better. That there'll be not only peace in the Middle East, but like really peace everywhere. Peace with Israel, peace with the US, with Canada, with everywhere. There'll be peace established. That's kind of what everybody's hoping.
I
So
mean, that's
yeah,
beautiful to know, and it's important for everybody to know. And religious or not, praying for that outcome, proactive ways to get there is good, and that's what we need to do on the West. We need to understand that the Iranian people are not the regime; they're separate from the regime, and yeah, their hearts ache for what the Israelis are going through, and believe it or not, a lot of Israelis ache for what the oppressed Iranian people are going through as well. So I think there's a lot of sympathizing, empathizing between the
right.
communities, and it would be a great day if we can get those two peoples in a room together, just
Yes.
some fellowship.
Yes.
That'll be a wonderful day.
Yes.
Um,
It's political Islam that's the core problem of all these things that have happened, using politics and manipulating religion to get what they want, basically. That's how I view it.
yeah, Seema,
So,
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right, and I think your insights on that are valuable and important. And I'm so thankful and grateful that you were able to share those with us. and give us those insights, especially speaking on behalf of your community that's in Iran, and also the expat Iranian community that's here that I'm sure you're very close with. So we really appreciate your time for being with us. And we will pray for the Iranian people here at Camera's
Thank you.
Partnership of Christians and Jews, and I will keep in touch with you as things unfold. I really value you as a source of authentic, objective perspective. You might not be a political commentator or or a historian, but you have a firsthand account of what's going on, and I think right now in this news media world, it's important for that voice to have an outlet. So we really appreciate your being willing to share it with us.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me, and thank you to your listeners for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Seema, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Take care.